local to the South Burnett, and certainly when we invited him to come up this evening, he said he was thrilled to come back to this country because it's special to him as well. So I was fortunate enough to take part in the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation's Leadership for Our Regions program last year with Andrew and Steph from the South Burnett as well. And as part of that, Waverley was a guest speaker there. So we are just so delighted that through that experience, I guess it all goes full circle sometimes, that you come across people in your life, and Waverley's words at that session really made a mark on everyone, I think, who was on that program, and Andrew's nodding. We've had many conversations about the lessons that Waverley shared during that experience, and so I would really encourage anyone who is a note taker to pull your notebooks out, because certainly I still reflect on the words and the notes that I took from that experience and getting to know you, Waverley. Welcome to the Bunyas, welcome to the Red Earth Community Leadership Program for 2020, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you very much to Christy for the invitation, to the Red Earth Community Foundation board members that are here tonight, and also to the staff that facilitated. To yourselves, I suppose, but firstly let me acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners of this area. So this is Waka Waka country, and this is a very special place for Indigenous people, because this used to be an area where a lot of our old people came and traded. So Western Waka Waka people, and from my family, my dad's Barungan from Chinchilla area, and so they and the old people that traded with people from the coast. So as you would see around, you've got a lot of the bunya nuts are falling down. So a lot of our old people over those years, every 3 years, they used to come here, and they used to do lore, L-O-R-E. And so where you are sitting now is a place of learning and a place of rejuvenation, but it's also a special place in regards to making sure where a lot of rituals and a lot of ceremonies took place. And a lot of Aboriginal people that come to the Bunya Mountains didn't stay in the Bunya Mountains, they stayed down but came up here for ceremony. So it's an honour to be here, absolutely an honour to be speaking. But I'm just going to share a bit about my journey, and then give you maybe some ideas or some words of wisdom, whether you could call it words of wisdom or even just some lessons that I've learned along the way in regards to leadership. And then I'm happy to open it up for questions and that after that. So I think I was speaking with Margie, so she was saying that, or the facilitator is actually saying, I think it was Pam or Heather, said that if you don't ask a question, you don't get fed. So if you want to have a feed, you've got to ask some questions. So I'm just going to share a bit about my story. So I grew up in Murgon. Murgon is home for me. I left Murgon. So I was born in Rockhampton, but my mum and dad were born and raised in Cherbourg. So on that level, my mum and dad were born in 1944, and it was before we got citizenship in this country in 1967. So it's quite ironic for me that my mum and dad were classed as flora and fauna, and I was an Australian citizen in 1967. But that's our history. And where we are here right now today is about making your own personal history yourself. Doesn't matter where you come from, whether you're black, white, brindle, purple or corrugated. We as Australians make this country the great country that it is. And the journey that you are on right now is about you personally contributing to this country. It is about personally contributing to this country, whether it's a North Burnett, South Burnett, whether it's Queensland, whether it's Australia. You have an impact and an opportunity and a duty to play your part in this world. And you find a purpose within all of this to make sure that you are doing something that is going to have significance. So my journey started at Murgon. I went to primary school from grade 1 to grade 7. And I was looking back on my education life. Education for me was very stable because I'm the eldest of 7 children. My brothers and sisters all went to Murgon State School and to Murgon High School, but I was the only one out of my 3 younger brothers, 3 younger sisters. That in 1979 and then in 1980, 1979 my grade 7 teacher was Mrs. Rosemary Bishop. And Mrs. Bishop unbeknownst to me, provided a scholarship for me to go to Toowoomba Grammar School.
Wow.
And so from 1980 to 1984, I boarded at Toowoomba Grammar School, and I met Mandy Bishop for the first time. And I went to school with her husband Russell, and Russell was in year 9 when I was in year 12 as an house prefect at Taylor House at Toowoomba Grammar School. So Mrs. Rosemary Bishop, there are significant people in your lives that play an important role that you don't know, that see something in you. So Mrs. Bishop, unbeknownst to me, was sending over my school records in grade 7 to Mr. Dent, who now has passed. And Mr. Dent was the headmaster at Toowoomba Grammar School, and Mrs. Bishop wrote a letter to Mr. Dent saying, can you please give me some contacts? I've got a young man here that I would like you to consider helping out about going to a school in Toowoomba. And Mr. Dent politely replied back to Mrs. Bishop saying, don't worry about me giving you other contacts, just ask his parents to come over and have an interview and we'll see where it goes. So I had an interview so the story goes, Mrs. Bishop asked my mum and dad to come up to Murgon State School on a Friday because on the Tuesday we were invited to go to Toowoomba Grammar School to have an interview with Mr. Dent, do a tour of the school. Did that, and then on the Thursday they had a Board of Governance or their school council meeting. Then they made a decision that they would offer me a scholarship to go to Toowoomba Grammar School. On the Friday, Mr. Dent rang back to Mrs. Bishop saying that I was offered a scholarship at Toowoomba Grammar School. So from 1980 to 1984, I boarded as the only Aboriginal boy at Toowoomba Grammar School for 5 years. And that course of that decision changed my life. And the man I am today is who I am because of Mrs. Rosemary Bishop. And that was, yeah. And so growing up in Murgon, Murgon is home for me. I left there in 1985, and I still call Murgon home. And I've been away from home now 35 years. And to come back and give back to the South Burnett and where you come from. So my journey started there at Murgon, went to Toowoomba Grammar School. And then I did a public service exam at Toowoomba Grammar School while I was in year 12. And then I then finished on a Thursday, and then on the Monday morning I had a public service job to go to Australian Taxation Office in 1985. So I had 9 months back at home in Murgon. And so on the Thursday, finished school, and then on the Monday morning I went and sat out on the fence at the Murgon Meatworks. And when I say sitting on the fence, and then you were getting told, and so Dinky Davis, who was the foreman of the beef floor at the time, and some people are laughing because Dinky was a significant person in my life also because we all played rugby league, and growing up in a little small country town, it didn't matter whether you were related or not, whether you were all your children were always looked after, whether you were an Indigenous person or a non-Indigenous person. And so the 5 Indigenous families in Murgon at the time were the Stanleys, the Renoffs, the Conlons, the Leedys, and the Purcells. So another famous other people from Murgon is, Steve Renoff, Bucko, Leah, but there's a lot of famous people that come out of Murgon and South Burnett, like Carl Rackman. And then I was just talking to Carl just before, Carl's dad used to coach me in cricket all those years ago. So that Murgon was, I grew up in Murgon, and then my biggest claim to fame is that I've never been unemployed in my life. And when I left Toowoomba Grammar School, I said I would never, ever, ever accept Social Security or settle. And that is my biggest achievement in my life right now, besides my children and my grandchildren. So I left Toowoomba Grammar School, went down to the Australian Taxation Office, started doing as a clerk or admin assistant. Worked in government for 15 years, and then worked for Australian Taxation Office, Social Security, and then an Aboriginal organisation called Aboriginal Childcare, and then Education Queensland, where I found my passion, and I always wanted to be a teacher. But in 1984, they didn't have, because my TE school wasn't good, so my two priorities at boarding school were sport and girls. And sometimes I had to juggle, so I didn't know which one to juggle. Sometimes the Fairhaven girls or the Glennie girls, but I didn't tell them to tell I sport one in the end. So I didn't have. I always wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't have the TE score for it, and they didn't have alternative entry until the year after, and I was already employed. Became a father at 20, married at 21. I have 4 children, three daughters and a son, and 3 grandsons. And I also have a foster daughter that's given us 2 little grandsons. and my eldest grandson now is 15 months, and he come down to home last weekend. I forgot how tired you get. Yeah, because all he wanted to do was play with his trucks and just run around with Pop, and that's all he done. So from there, my leadership journey started, I suppose, in my sporting career. You know, when you're captain to football teams, you know, you don't really know that at the time. And maybe an exercise for you, and I've done this over the time, is, you know, putting down, and you're on this leadership journey right now, so you're at the start of a journey. And your leadership journey has to be intentional. Your personal and professional growth has to be intentional. All I can be is be the best Waverley Stanley. I can't be anybody else. So all you have to be, so the values you have as an individual, and you're growing up in your family history, but growing up all the many values that you have as a family, but the values that you have as an individual. You've got to make sure that the values you have are congruent with who you are as an individual. You can't be an authentic person if you are not truthful about stuff. So from that aspect is then saying, for you as an individual, your lesson here, you're here on Sunday now, so it's the 10th of February 2020. So you have to ask yourself, why are you here? Why are you here sitting on Sunday when you could be at home on your property or getting ready for work tomorrow? So you have to ask yourself, why am I here? But the next question has to be then, what am I going to contribute that is going to make significance for us in the future? Because there's no use coming to these leadership development programs if you aren't reading. Put up your hand if you're reading right now. If you are reading books, like there's a bunch of books over there right now. Don't be shy. Put your hands up. How many groups are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah. Yeah, everyone's reading over here. Everyone knows how to read. Now, the reason why I ask that is because if you're on a leadership development program, and I'll talk about leadership, if you're not reading personally and investing in yourself, you're shooting yourself in the foot right from the word go. If you are going to lead, you have to invest in yourself, because if you're leading and nobody is following you, you're just going for a walk. There's no use you being out in front or behind, because you can lead from the front, you can lead from the side, you can lead from behind. But if you as an individual are not leading yourself, and you've got to lead yourself first and be intentional about your own personal and professional development, if you are not doing that, no one is going to walk that path with you, because you can't blaze the trail yourself. So if you are going to lead, you've got to lead yourself first and foremost. But your values that you have as an individual has to marry up with who you are. And your values as an individual, and whether you work for an organisation, those values have to marry up also. So my leadership journey started in Murgon with a bunch of sport, and then in 2006, 2007, I applied for the Australian Rural Leadership Program, and with the Australian Rural Leadership Foundation in Canberra, and I did an 18-month program where there were 3 Indigenous people selected out of 31, and it was an 18-month program, and prior to that I was doing a lot of leadership development in regards to young people when I was working for Education Queensland. So I was already doing that sort of stuff, and then I started applying for myself to invest in myself, and so I did the Australian Rural Leadership Program. And that was back in 2006, 2007. And so my journey on that level started, I think, in 2000, when I'll tell you a story about where I made a decision. There was a fork in the road for me when I was working for Education Queensland. And there are going to be moments in your life that you're either going to back yourself or you're going to second guess yourself. So my time came when I attended an education conference for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and we were called Community Education Councillors or teacher aides in the schools. And we had a state conference at Magnetic Island, North Townsville. And I was working as a district community education counsellor up at Taylor and Johnson District Office in Atherton at the time. This was 2000, 2001, I think. And I went away to this workshop, and I remember it was a 5-day workshop, and I think I was there for 1 day, and they had some representatives coming out from Education Queensland, and some of the bureaucrats come out, and all they could talk about was the high suspension and exclusion rate of Indigenous children at schools around Queensland. And then I was working with a lot of children in that space where we were doing some good stuff. I was doing a lot of workshops and a lot of leadership development with young people. And I didn't quite agree, because it's a bit like, big wheels grind slowly in government. And so at the morning tea time, I think it was the first or the second day, I went back to my room, had a cup of tea, and I was quite moved that, someone was going to tell me that, that's all they could concentrate was the negative stuff, and I wanted the positive stuff. I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in children that wanted to be a part and be educated. And I would give my time for that. And children spell love, T-I-M-E. Adults spell love, T-I-M-E. Your work is spelt T-I-M-E. We all have 24 hours in a day. We all have 24 hours in a day, and it's how we use it. So on that day, I went back, had a cup of tea, and then I made a decision that if nothing changes, nothing changes. And I made a decision then to get on the ferry to go back from Magnetic Island to Townsville, jump in a Gubby car, and this was on a Saturday, drive back to Atherton. And on the way back from Atherton, I was then thinking about how I was going to resign from Education Queensland, and I started thinking over in my mind what business I could do, because I was already doing workshops for young people. And I knew there was a gap that I could do, and I could do that. So I went into Taylor and Johnson District Office on the Monday morning. I said to my line manager, Henry, I said, Henry, I'm going to resign on December the 20th, and I'm going to take up my own business. And Henry said to me, wait, just have a think about it, come back and see me on Friday, and we'll have another talk. And so by then I went down to, on the Tuesday then, I went down and bought a laptop, and then I was working, so I'd work during the day, and then at night I'd come home and put together a business plan, and my first business was called Pathway to Success. So when Henry sent me on Friday afternoon before we left for work, he said, Wavy, what's your decision? He said, you can take leave without pay, and then if it doesn't work out, you can come back in and work for us again. I said, no, brother, it doesn't work like that. I said, I've got two choices, Henry. I either succeed or I succeed. And that was it. So I resigned from Education Queensland on the 20th, on the 21st, and then that was in the September school holidays, and then in November I took a week's holiday, and then I went down and did a workshop for Indigenous people that wanted to go into business. The cut-off age was 30, I was 31 at the time, and they let me in. And that's when I met a couple of people that was quite significant, like Graham Wise that owned the body shop, for instance. And I met his CEO, and we became friends. And lo and behold, a couple of phone calls later, I was facilitating in Canberra for a couple of years, just with young people. And that was a decision I made, that I resigned on the 20th. And I'm saying to you, there are crossroads in your life that you'll make a decision that you will not go back on. So I made a decision at that time that I would never, ever, ever work for a government department again. And I've been in business for myself now for 20 years. My wife and I started Yalari in April 2005, which is a not-for-profit company where we select Indigenous children to go to boarding schools from regional, rural and remote communities. So we started that with 3 children in 2006 from Murgon, Sherbrooke and Wandai. Our first 3 children that went to Toowoomba Grammar School and the Glennie School. And we've grown a bit now. We've got 212 children around Australia in 20 schools. We've got 350 graduates. We employ 8 of our alumni. And I know, as I was saying before, my focus now is about the leadership development of our young people and young adults, and that's what I'm focused on. So the leadership journey for you as an individual, and I know you're sitting here right now, and you're going to be second guessing yourself. Did I make the right decision? This is about investing in yourself. So everything that you're doing is about investing in yourself. And for me, you know, same with our children, the investment in a child for us for 6 years, that investment is $150,000 per child for 6 years. To go to a private school. How many people sitting around here did your family members go to a private school? See, for many of our families, their hands wouldn't go up because there's not as been any generation that have gone to a private school. So this was not a choice. Our families have never had a choice to go to a private school, so we've given them a choice. But there is a standard that you have to accept in regards to the children they accept on that program. So for us as a business, the return on investment for me in the future is that, saying to our children that, you know, our 350 graduates, the return on investment is that when these children become mums and dads, or, you know, they might invest in their own nephew or niece, that they will invest in them going to their own private school also. And that's a return on investment that's been paid for. So your investment on your leadership journey right now, it is about investing in yourself. It is about reading and mentoring, getting the mentoring from those books. So I've been reading a lot of books for a lot of years on leadership, and one of my mentors just through the books is John C. Maxwell. John C. Maxwell is a leadership man that's over, I think he's in his late 60s, and I'm going to America in March for 7 days, and I'm doing his leadership training. So I did a facilitation for the Australian Leadership Foundation in Canberra last year for 7 days, and that payment from that 7 days has now allowed me to go to America for 7 days to do some leadership development with John C. Maxwell. So your leadership development is about you leading yourself first and foremost. And you have to know yourself. Like they say in the Bible, know thyself. You know yourself the best. And all the different hats that you put on, all the different hats you put on, and you've got to make sure that you know that who you are behind closed doors and who you are out in the public are one and the same. If you have a different persona at home, just like me, I'm an Indigenous man, but I'm an Australian. Who I am in my Indigenous community and who I am in the community at large is one and the same. Just because I come from a little small country town, Murgon is still home for me. My 3 younger brothers, I'm no better than them just because I went to a state school. My mum and dad had a grade 5 and grade 8 education. Who I am can just be, the only person I can be is just be Waverley Stanley. I can't be like my father, I can't be like my mother, I can only be myself. So your leadership journey starts now. And if you're on this leadership journey, we are lifelong learners from the cradle to the grave. Every day is a learning experience. Every day that you are alive is a learning experience. A learning experience for me today was going into Oki. The reason why is because the last time I was in Oki, I was playing for the Oki Bears in grade 11 and grade 12, and I nearly got suspended for playing rugby league because we were a rugby union school. And at that time, you know, you weren't allowed, and we used to sign ourselves out, you know, I'm telling out of tail schools, but Russell can tell you these sort of things, they're too bad. So you used to have a name, give yourself a name, and then you could go and play for, and it's funny, I only went back to Oki today and I went past the football field just to have a bit of a look. And while I was there, you know, and then in the Chronicle, you know, they had got your photo, and then in the paper, and then all of a sudden you get a knock at the door, or you're told to be summoned up to the Deputy Headmaster's office and say, "Right, Stanley, I want you to stop this rugby league playing." I said, "Yes, sir." And no more rugby league. So it was quite funny. And the new thing was to drive from Oki up here to the Bunya Mountains. That was something brand new again today. So the lifelong learning for you as an individual is about knowing who you are, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, and I know, talking to the facilitators, you're going to go through all of that over the course of the week. But the challenges that you are on this journey, it is about being challenged physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, financially, socially, culturally, and educationally. You are going to be challenged, which is a wonderful thing to be, Because the most growth is when you're outside of your comfort zone. You either do, there's no try in it. You either cross the street or you don't. You either develop yourself or you don't. So from a leadership point of view, you have to then start saying, knowing thyself, what are my strengths? So one of the strengths for me right now is public speaking. And it was only because of Yalari that I've been able to do all this public speaking. And I've spoken at all my fundraising dinners, I've spoken in front of a lot of people, and I'm not daunted by it anymore. But when I first started, I've now turned from being scared now into a weakness to say, because I had to do that when we first started Yalari, my wife Llew and I, when we started our company in our house at home in Southwood, I would have to go out and speak to everybody and selling the idea of what Yalari was. So my uncomfortableness was when I'd go to corporate companies in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, sitting across the table from people and then coming out and sharing the Yalari story, sharing my story, showing what the bigger picture is, what we're wanting to do, and then knowing fully well that they don't want to be on board. And then I'd come back home, I'm thinking, But whereas now, like I said, I at a function with a bunch of CEOs that I met in Brisbane late last year and early this year, saying to these CEOs, this is the story that we've got. But if you don't want to be involved, that's good. There's a lot of wonderful organisations and charities out there. But if you want to be jumping on board, you're going to be involved in something a lot bigger. It's about generational change. And for some of them that don't jump on board to help and support us, all I say is next. Because my value system as an individual, I will not do business with people that have not had the same value set as me. So our organisation Yalari, which means child and Birigubba language, on my grandfather's side and my mum's side. Our values is CORRIE, C-O-R-R-I-E. And CORRIE stands for compassion, openness, respect, resilience, inclusiveness and excellence. Those are our values. Those are our values as a not-for-profit company. So everybody that works for us, their value system has to be the same with us, because if they're not the same as us, it is like a square peg in a round hole. So those values, and I said this to my staff last week, I sent out a message to all of our staff and our board members and to our supporters, saying what are the values and reinforcing our values as an organisation. And then my own personal values as a man, as a father, as a grandfather and as a husband and as a business person. My personal values is spelled CARE, C-A-R-E. And CARE stands for courage, action, respect and empowerment. Over the course of your leadership journey, you have to come to a realisation, what are you going to stand for? You either stand for something or you fall for nothing, fall for anything. So your personal values, you have to come up with yourselves, and over the course of this journey right now, your values have to be coming through, and it'll come through out of the books that you read, the people that you associate with, and the people that uplift you. So your journey is about your own individual journey. So Minty's journey is totally going to be different to Brenda's, and Brenda's journey is going to be totally different to Elvis. He.
We've all been wanting to do that.
Right. Yes. More for the morning. Yeah. But that's one thing. From a values point of view, I cannot stress that enough. I will not do business with anyone that don't have the same values as me. Will not. So leadership, it is something so valuable, and our communities are crying out for leaders and are crying out for heroes. But if you don't lead yourself first, you are no good to having anyone following you, and it is about being authentic and being about true to who you are. And on the way up, I was just thinking about the word leadership. And I just wanted to spell this out for you. So whether you want to write this down or not. So I'm big on pictures. So leadership for me means L stands for learning. We are lifelong learners. E is about empowerment. These are some things that I find from a leadership perspective, and I want you to then say, if this is my take on leadership, you then have to find words that resonate with you as an individual. A is for, what did I say that there? A is for action. It could be authenticity. It could be accountability. It could be awareness. D is for drive. D is for dreams. E is for empathy. E is for energy. Am I right? Is that right? Yeah, no. Yes, good. I'm educated. So R is respect. Another one is resilience. Another one is responsible. S is success. And I want you to write this quote down. The only time success comes before work is in the dictionary. Look it up. You won't find success after work. Success, sense of belonging, sharing. H is for humility, being humble, holistic. And on your leadership journey, and why I say holistic is that from a health point of view, if you are going to be leading, you have to be in the best space in regards to your health. It's no use being the wealthiest person in the grave in the cemetery. And it's no use having the energy if you're going to work long hours and the drive to keep going if you don't have the energy for it. So last year I had 2 knee operations. I tore my meniscus in my knee playing cricket. And I think it was a bit of a godsend because I was doing so many things. I was playing cricket, I was playing golf, I was doing F45, and I went off and did Army Reserve down at Kapuka. Because I became a father at 20, married at 21. And one of my dreams was to go into the army. And here I was at 52 years of age going down to Kapuka with 18 and 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds beside you. And it was something just as a challenge. So I had to be fit enough to do that. So my operations now that I have to be fit enough, if I'm going to, for us as an organisation, we've finished 10 years, we now come up to 20. So my job is, in the next 10 years, is to be fit enough and healthy enough where we're talking about generational change. So a generation is 25 years. So we as an organisation working in partnership with all of our sponsors, donors and supporters and families is staying the course for the next 10 years to have an impact on 25 years that will have an impact on 5 generations, which is 125 years. That is holistic. That is about us looking after ourselves. And you have to do that. Because there are moments when I wanted to give up on Yalari. And I've got it tattooed on my arm. I've got Yalari tattooed. I don't condone this, but I had Yalari on my left arm, and I've got never give up on my right arm. Because when I was doing triathlons, I could sit there and know that I could read it. And I could look down because there are moments when you want to give up. And on your leadership journey, you are wanting to give up. Every minute of the day you give up. But you've got to get back on the board. You've got to get back on the boat. You've got to get back up again. Because it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. The only thing that matters is how many times you get back up, but you stay up. So I is for inspiration. Inclusiveness. But inspiring is something that you do. And P is passion. Passion and purpose. Because if you don't have a passion for this leadership, people will see that and they will see it very, very clearly. But they aren't going to follow you, like I said to you before. If you think people are going to follow you and you're out in front or beside you and there's no one following you, you're just going for a good long walk. And another thing I just want to leave with you, so am I nearly up there, Jules?
You're right.
I'm right, okay. But I just want to challenge you also then too, is that over the course, I do a lot of reading. What I've got on my computer at the moment, I'm big on quotes, and I've got all these different categories, you know, authenticity, beliefs, dreams, you know, challenges, cooperation, you know, motivation. And I've got all these different categories, and I find all these quotes. But I want you to find a quote that picks you up by the bootlaces when are the moments when you are down, or the moments that you just need to be picked up. Because in our journey on Yalari, so we've been going for 15 years, but we lost everything in a fire in 2012. We had our office at Morsland Road at Oxenford. And unbeknownst to us, someone underneath us had a little kebab shop, and they went for insurance fraud. And our office was up the top. And in that fire, we lost everything in the fire. And this was in 2012. And there was a quote in there that picked me up at that moment. So in that moment, we lost everything in the fire, and the only thing that we found in the fire was a petty cash box that held money for us for milk and bread for our staff, and we found and we had a camera box that had a data projector. Those are the only two things that we salvaged out of the fire. One thing, nobody lost their lives, which was the most important thing, and then that we were able to move to another office straight away. So that happened on a Sunday, early Monday morning. And I remember saying to my wife, Lou, at the time, that, you know, family looks after family. And I made some phone calls, and we ended up at the Gold Coast Titan Centre of Excellence, and we were there for 9 months. And I remember, I live at, I don't know if you know Mount Tamborine, but I live at just off Henry Robert Drive going out towards Bow Desert from Nerang. And it's about an 18% gradient, and this one morning, straight after the fire, I think it was a Tuesday morning, and I remember walking down the hill and then trying to run, and I was so angry, and I don't know if you ever tried to run and cry at the same time. It doesn't happen. So I was so angry, and I was running up part of the way up Henry Robert, and I was crying, and I screamed out to God. I said, "Why did you do this to us? Why did you do this to us? We're good people." And I was at about the halfway mark, and I was looking out, and where Henry Robert Drive is, you could see the Tower of Terror. You know where the Tower of Terror Dream World is? And so the Tower of Terror, I could see it in the distance. And then this little small voice on my shoulder says, you know, and I said, you know, and the answer come back, and I said, why? Why did you do this to us? And the little voice said, why not? You can handle this. And then I was looking out to the Tower of Terror, and just before the Tower of Terror was where our office is. And then another voice said, you know, look beyond the fire. And from there, you know, it was a godsend for us on that level, that, you know, it was a bit like this phoenix, you know, rising out of the fire. And I also looked at it as a rejuvenation for us as an organisation, because that then started to clear out some dead wood on so many levels, but we lost a lot of things in it. So your personal journey is going to be your own individual journey. And where that ends up is going to be the most wonderful thing where it is. So your moments here of learning right now as a group, and this is your support group. These are so the people that are sitting around here are going to be your support group. They are going to be the people that you can ring up, you know, at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning saying, will you take my phone call? I just need to have a yarn. But not only when things aren't going so well, but also celebrate the successes along the way. But find some people that you want to aspire to. Like some heroes for me, for instance, is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And one of the quotes at that time that kept me going as an individual, and it goes like this, says, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in moments of challenge and controversy. And that applies to a lady also. It applies to anyone, children, young people, adults. So find a quote that resonates with you, that picks you up and says, you know, it's okay. And another one for me is Madiba, the late Mr. Nelson Mandela. And I had the opportunity to go into South Africa in 2014 on a Churchill Fellowship. And I went there looking at boarding school initiatives in South Africa and also Tanzania. And to be humbled by what he's done, but the thing was about it is, you know, I've read so many books on him, but to be there physically in a place where he was. So your learning journey is about constantly learning. And the conversations that you have, it is about improving yourself as an individual, not moving away from your values, but making sure at the end of the day is that you are accountable each and every day when you put your head on the pillow. Because you can't lie to the man or the woman in the mirror. So as a man in the mirror is who you are, and the woman in the mirror is who you are also. So for this journey to be successful and along the way, whatever you think success is, your personal growth is your personal responsibility. And I said that to my staff now, over 36 staff around Australia. If you are not growing as an individual, our company is not growing. So if you're working for somebody else or if you're working for yourself, if you are not growing and expanding your challenges in life, you are not growing, you are doing yourself a disservice and your company or your business a disservice. So your growth in this life is about personal growth and it is intentional. So that's my little bit of leadership journey. So I hope I've shared something there with you. But please, don't be afraid to make some mistakes either. Fall flat on your face and get back up again. But I can tell you, it is. You have to be courageous to have a go at this. Anyone can be a follower. There are times when to lead, and there are times when to follow. I'll give you a prime example. I was appointed captain of our over 40s team at Mount Tambourine. And with my captaincy, there's a certain standard that you accept as an individual, and same in business. And there were some blokes that I would not have on the team. And there were 3 of them, and I chopped them. Well, I can tell you, you either stand by it, and I said, well, if I'm going to be captain, this is what I'm going to do. And then I said, no. If I'm going to be captain, this is the way I want to lead. This is where we're going to go. Because I brought in training, and they didn't want to train. And it was just a simple thing. And some fellas got away with stuff for years and years, and they just turn up any old time. I said, no, we've got to look after ourselves. We're over 50 now, boys.
That's it.
And so they didn't want to train. I said, oh, I'm not your captain. I became a follower. But I chose to train. So there's a time when you've got to decide between when it's time to lead and when it's time to follow. But in amongst all this here, this is about you enjoying the journey. And enjoy the journey because, today we're alive. There are a lot of people in this world that will never, ever, ever get the opportunity to be sitting where you are right now. But your impact, and I just want to leave this with one quote. The 2 most important days in your life are the day that you were born and the day that you find out why. So while you're here this week and over the course of this journey, why are you here? Why are you on this leadership journey? What is your contribution going to be for your community, the North or South Burnett, or if you come from Highfields, or Queensland, or Australia? What are you going to do? It is about a personal contribution that you're going to make. So I wish you all the very best. And if our paths follow again, and there's another introduction by Christy, I'm easily paid, watered and fed, no problem at all. Yeah. So thank you so very much. All the very best for this.